Hi, how are you? This is Dr. Farley, and the blog for this week is pretty exciting, I have to say. I'm always reviewing information, and sometimes I go on to PubMed, which is the National Institutes of Health database, and I download a bunch of articles. I put rubber bands around them, and I just keep tracking information over time. I read this, I look for some references, I read that, and pretty soon I've got a really clear picture on what's going on. And I usually will track a topic for a couple days right in a row, reading numerous things, so I'm really familiar with it. So what I want to go over today is this is a review paper published by Dr. Jeremy Schmanahan. It was published in August 2010 in the Neuropsychology Review, and the title is The Role of the Cerebellum in Cognition and Emotion, Personal Reflections since 1982 on Dysmetria of Thought Hypothesis and its historical evolution from theory to therapy. So by the way, there's 1,400 citations here in this paper. So this is total science. And this is only up to 2010. So if we were to take this now, there could be 3,000, 5,000 citations on this topic here. And I also purchased his book, and I tend to do that as well. And then I have the hard reference on this as well. And basically, this is talking about the cerebellum and cognition. So when you look at the brain, you have the top part of the brain, the bottom part of the brain. So this is the cerebellum down in here, and this is my brain inside me like this. So the cerebellum really is the most important part of the entire brain for the brain to work properly, for the brain to then be the master system and control the other 10 subsystems. And over a time frame, if the cerebellum is breaking down, the entire brain is breaking down. Now, when I was taught in school, I'm not even sure now, I forget, 1990, 91, and the whole way through, you look up the cerebellum, and it says that it's involved with balance, coordination, muscle tone, that kind of stuff. And now, what we know is that it's involved in everything. And so cognition, emotion, and dysmetria of thought. So dysmetria means like an abnormal movement, like a ratchety type movement. And you may see that when you're doing tests with someone as they're coming in to touch their nose or whatever else it may be, where there's an abnormal movement there, ratchety, that's how I would describe it. But how about this idea? You can also get ratchety thoughts, ratchety emotions, because the same cerebellum does not just run your musculoskeletal system. It runs your thought. It runs your cognition, it runs your emotions. And over a time frame, if the cerebellum is breaking down, we can get all kinds of problems that show up inside the human brain. A lot of these are termed psychiatric problems, when realistically, they're actually not psychiatric problems at all. There's no psychological problem behind it. It's that the brain is breaking down. And I've said for years and years and years, many times, the beginning of a brain going into neurodegeneration are early signs of what they call neuropsych symptoms. This may be depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, delusions, all those types of things. And this paper just is really clear that from the field of neurology and neuropsychiatry, that we must look at function. We must stop talking about psychological causes of these things. We need to look at what's going on with the person. Talk therapy, great. You can do it all day long. If your cerebellum's breaking down, it's not going to work. And many times, some other signs that you're showing of neurodegeneration besides the neuropsych issues can be constipation. It's a big one. Sleep, anemia, blood pressure issues, erectile dysfunction, other hormonal imbalances, any other gastrointestinal symptom like gassy, bloaty, acid stomach. All of that can be happening because the brain is breaking down. So the point here is that we must go back and evaluate the brain on how it's working. So we do a complete analysis here. We do what's called the Super 7 Plus testing. In many of those tests, we are assessing cerebellar function. And we know that if we have this, it can show up as a lot of different things. By the way, this goes all the way back to the 1960s. We knew about this. Okay, listen to this. Your perception of yourself and the world around you must have a properly functioning cerebellum. So the cerebellum modulates behavior, maintaining it around a homeostatic baseline appropriate to context. In the same way the cerebellum regulates the rate, force, rhythm, and accuracy of movements, so does it regulate the speed, capacity, consistency, and appropriateness of mental or cognitive processes. And you understand that? I mean, it's pretty wow that the cerebellum is involved in all those things. Dysmetria of movement is a term referring to a traditional ataxic gait or irregular and uncoordinated movements of the extremities resulting from cerebellar lesions. It's then matched by dysmetria of thought, which is an unpredictability and illogical to social and societal interactions. So you become illogical in your thought process. You become illogical in how you view things. You become illogical in your connection with people. Your perception of yourself and the world around you is off. The overshoot and inability of the motor system to check parameters of movement are equated, and in the cognitive realm, with a mismatch between reality and perceived reality, an erratic attempt to correct the errors of thought of behavior. So what does that mean? It means that we can't even get a grasp of our perception of ourself and the reality of what's going on around us if the brain is breaking down, and the cerebellum is the key. No one even looks at this. It's amazing to me. We have kids coming in. Their balance is off. They walk on their toes. They don't sleep. They have gastrointestinal problems. And then we're told Johnny Joe's got some psychological problem. It does not go deep enough. The other thing that you want to know too is he termed this cerebellar cognitive effect syndrome. There can be marked personality changes. People can become disinhibited, disrespectful, and childlike. There can be issues with working memory, distractibility, and lack of mental flexibility, together with improper speech and spontaneous conversation. The other thing that you want to know is when we get in here, the cool thing about this is we get over to the treatments, okay? And they say, hey, here's what we know about the treatments. Well, nothing that these scientists do, none of them are trained in how the brain actually functions and restoring normal physiology. So they're measuring it. They're knowing that the cerebellum's involved. We can look at the circuitry and say there's abnormal issues going on with these networks, as I call them, and it's showing up as imbalances. But they're not experts at all in knowing how to treat the cerebellum. We're totally experts in understanding how the cerebellum works, measuring it, finding the deficits, and then setting up the most appropriate plan. And the 5 areas that we help is brain-based care, cellular energetics, which is the ability of the cells to make energy, including the cerebellum, lifestyle modifications, foods, and specific nutrients that you require for your individual needs. So there's nothing that we do that's invasive, and it's a way to really get at making the brain work better. And again, the cerebellum is the most important part of the brain, and it's involved in everything. So anyone that's concerned with their health should be looking at the overall brain. But then when you want to know really, you want to look right at the cerebellum, because the cerebellum runs the entire brain. So the left cerebellum activates the right cortex, right cerebellum activates the left cortex, and vice versa. So there's things that you can do to make the cerebellum work better. We're absolute experts at this. We've been doing this for a long time frame. And if you have any questions, please let us know. I hope you find this interesting. But again, we have to stop this idea that when someone starts to have certain symptoms, whether it's a neurodegenerative symptom of a tremor or stiffness and I can't move, or my memory, whatever it may be, the same thing with depression, anxiety, bipolar, cognition, delusion, schizophrenia type stuff. We need to stop looking at that as a psychological problem and start evaluating it as a biological brain problem, and go somewhere where someone understands how the brain works and what you can do to get the brain to work better. So thanks, have a great day, and as always, if you have any questions, please shoot them out to us. Thank you. Bye-bye.